Well, Agnes Smedley is an American radical woman who who did amazing things, and it's really amazing that nobody hardly knows about her. And Agnes Smedley is really good about any kind of oppression. So I feel like she has an eye to see oppression from her childhood, because she was so oppressed in her own childhood. And what she does is she calls out everybody.
When we think about school curriculum, specifically in history, it is not surprising that certain things like events and people in history don't get the proper amount of attention, if any at all. Some people would argue that some of these events and people should be highlighted as an integral part of history.
When we think about social activists from history, the names Martin Luther King Jr. or Malcolm X might immediately come to mind. While their work has been tremendous in the progression of civil rights and activism, other works and efforts are a lot less known. One of the people is Agnes Smedley.
Agnes Smedley, born on February 23rd, 1882 in Osgood, Missouri, grew up in a very poor family. She was able to support her family in her teen years working while still attending school. Although she was not able to finish her education, she later went on to complete it in 1911, and also discovering journalism. She was now living in California and has been diving into all sorts of political and socialist theories. She would later meet and work for a woman named Margaret Sanger in New York. Margaret and Agnes would be involved with the birth control review and would also be involved with a movement in support of India's independence from Britain. It would be soon that she would move to Shanghai, China, where she began her documentation of the Chinese Revolution from the inside.
She told the truth about what was happening in China. America, on the other hand, was covering up what was happening. We were supporting the reactionary forces in China because we, as we do in many countries, we support the people who are capitalists and are making money that our capitalists can work with and then make more money. And so she didn't go for that at all, and she told the truth about what the government was doing.
With this knowledge, she became a war correspondent for the U.S. After tension rose to the extreme level, Smedley returned to the U.S. while remaining an advocate for China and wrote several articles for several newspapers such as Saratogan, The New Masses, The Nation, The New Republic. Everything seemed fine until 1947 when she was accused of being a spy working against America. She fled to England where she spent her last years until she passed in 1950. It wasn't until 1952 that the FBI closed the investigation of Agnes Smedley.
Agnes used letters as her primary way of communication with those in her circle of influence, writing to people like Thornburg Bruton, who was a socialist and a supporter of Agnes. They would write to each other about their day-to-day activities and showcase their point of view as a radical activist in this point of time. In 1912, she met Thornburg Bruton, who was personally very important to her throughout her life, who also mentored her about her socialism. These quotes are from never-researched original Agnes writings to Thornburg, and which recently were found by Thornburg's granddaughter, Karen Haberman Trusty.
Before a year ago, we carried these letters around in our family, and my sister moved to Portland and said, "I don't want to bring the letters out, they're too heavy." I said, "No, I want to read them. I'd always wanted to read them." So when I read them, I was just blown away. And I was so proud of my grandmother.
Here are some of the quotes.
I'm reading a beautiful book on the French underground. It's entitled Army of Shadows, and I'll send it to you to read as soon as I finish. The writer admires the French communists, and so do I, in spots. But he tells how communists in a concentration camp escaped, but since their party had not given them permission to escape, they returned again to the concentration camp. The party decided only that 3 people in the camp should escape. Many did so and soon presented themselves to the camp for imprisonment again. Now the author of this book admires that. I don't. Think it's utter imbecility, and worse. Discipline may be all right, but not that sort of atrocity. Our government is all set to intervene in China. When they do so, they will cause a revolution that may throw them back on their heels. At least I hope so. The Chinese communists have already captured 8 divisions of American military equipment formerly in the hands of Chiang Kai-shek's medieval armies. What a government we have. I took part in a remarkable conference here. On last Saturdays, some 200 community leaders for the whole country gathered in Skidmore College for a whole day's conference on our foreign policy. We were divided up into 6 roundtables on the Far East, Germany, Britain, the USSR, racial conflicts, etc., etc. Each roundtable lasted throughout the day, and at 5 we gathered in the main college hall to hear reports and discuss them, then to vote and appoint committees to form resolutions and get out demands to Roosevelt, our congressman, etc. My reply is, this is a despicable lie. I will add further that I am not and never have been a communist, and that MacArthur knows it. General MacArthur proposes no action against me. He knows I am not guilty, but he makes his charges while hiding behind the protection of a law which says that he, as a top army official, cannot be sued for falsehood. I now say to General MacArthur, waive your immunity and I will sue you for libel.
General McCarthy just out of the blue said she's a spy, she's no good, we shouldn't listen to her anymore. Okay, where she stood up and said, I stand alone here. Because apparently you can't sue a general. They have immunity. And she said, if you'll waive your immunity, I will get a lawyer and I will sue your ass. And I will take you down because you have no proof. Okay, that was a bold thing to say for a woman, a white woman, to say this to the American government and army, the U.S. Army. 1 week later, they retracted it.
Agnes Smedley is just one of many people who remain overlooked in history with not much acknowledgement of their impact on society today. We, as a whole, need to reconsider what is crucial in history and what people we learn about, not just in the classroom, but outside in the real world. To celebrate and recognize the work that must not be forgotten about.
That you'll get a better understanding of the overarching ways that America works. There's a lot of good things about America, and there's a lot of stuff that's been hidden. And it's really important to show these hidden parts so we can come to a true understanding. I'm not pulling the race card when I say these things. These are things that happen. If a black person said it, they might be said, you're pulling the race card. That's bullshit. These are things that happen. The average black person in America gets 3 to 5 microaggressions a day. That means they've been insulted or ignored or turned back on 3 to 5 times a day. Can you imagine the average white person getting that? They punch them in the friggin' face, you know? So these are things that are important because how do we bring people together? Race has always been used to separate people, just like the accusation of communism has been used to separate people. And all it does is support the wealthy. If you notice today, the gap between the wealthy and the poor is getting bigger and bigger. And that means that all the poor people are fighting over 30% of the wealth and the rich people have 70% of the wealth. That's screwed up. It's not right. People are dying over this. It's not right. So I hope that this will help you see sort of the overarching picture of how important it is to have a movement, to see these things with your correct eyes, because I can guarantee you didn't learn it in high school. It blows your mind what she went through and how she learned and forced herself to learn to understand. And that's what we are not taught in this country, is to understand the overall picture. White women need white good heroines.